Jai Radha Madhav Kunj Bihari. Radha Madhav Kunj Bihari. Radha Madhav Kunj Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhav Kunj Bihari. Jai Jai Radha Madhav Kunj Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandan Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana 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 Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvijagacharya Ashtotra Shata Shri Srimad Srila Abhay Charanarand Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Thakur Haridas Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Visistadvaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinama Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Samsthapak Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Go Premanande. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today is the very auspicious occurrence of or anniversary of the appearance of Sripad Ramanujacharya, great Vaishnavacharya, to whom all of us are indebted. There's a traditional shloka glorifying him as follows. Vande Vedanta Karapura Chamikara Karandakam Ramanujarya Marhyanam Chudamani Maharnisham. That means day and night I offer my obeisances unto that golden basket containing the fragrant camphor of Vedanta, unto that Aryan among Aryans, unto Sri Ramanujacharya. He's compared to the golden treasure chest, you might say, which contains the camphor of Vedanta. Here we live in Vrindavan. Bilvamangala Thakur says, the fragrance of Vedanta is found in the footprints of the cows here in Vrindavan. So Ramanujacharya was great Vaishnavacharya. In the Sri Vaishnava line, we worship Srimati Radharani in Vrindavan. The Sri Vaishnavas worship Sri. Sri means Lakshmi Devi herself. So again, Bilvamangalacharya calls Srimati Radharani as Jaya Shri because she conquers even Shri in her ability to attract the mind of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So from Goddess Shri, this teaching was given to the Alawars, and from the Alawars it was handed down to Ramanujacharya, and from him, his followers are carrying out the same task, which we'll discuss since time immemorial. This is 1,000 years ago, roughly. Ramanujacharya appeared here in this world. So, Vedanta Karpura Chamikara Karandakam and Ramanujaryam Aryanam. Among all those who are greatly advanced, great souls in spiritual knowledge, he is the foremost. Chudamanim, he's the crest jewel of all of them. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet, day and night. This is our duty, to offer respects to our Acharya, especially our own spiritual master, but all the Vaishnava Acharyas. We know there are 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. The Sri Sampradaya, later on fortified by Ramanujacharya, whose appearance day is today. And then we have the Kumar Sampradaya, later on fortified by the Nimbarka Acharya, originally coming from 4 Kumars, but in Kali Yuga really disseminated mainly by Nimbarka and his followers. We have our own Sampradaya coming from Lord Brahma, the Brahma Sampradaya, and then given through Madhvacharya, and through the Madhvacharya line, it was accepted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is himself the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we have the Vishnu, the Rudra Sampradaya given by Lord Shiva, later on fortified by Vishnu Swami, and nowadays represented by Vallabhacharya and his followers, Pushti Marga. So these are the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. All of them accept the same conclusions, but they have slightly different philosophies, different perspectives, you can say, on how it is that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and exactly how he interacts with his material energy. The philosophy is organized a little different by each of them, but the conclusion is the same. Everyone agrees you have to surrender to Krishna. And Ramanujacharya was born, they say, around 1017 Common Era. So as I said, roughly 1,000 years ago. And he left this world, they say, in 1137 Common Era. He was a profound philosopher, and he was chief exponent of the philosophy of Visistadvaita. In Ramanujacharya's time, almost everyone, especially in South India, even to this day, South India is dominated by this Advaita philosophy, or more often than not, pseudo-Advaita philosophy, because nowadays nobody can do anything. But so we have so many neo-Advaitin, hodgepodge, khichdi philosophies, but they're all indebted to Shankaracharya. And that philosophy is that there's only one reality. There's only one spiritual reality, and it's everything, and it's including us. We're the same. Kevaladvaita, it's called. Only non-dualism. That has obvious problems, and it has been dealt with by the majority of Vedanta acharyas. The majority of them disagree with Shankaracharya, if you think about it. There are 4 or 5 schools of Vedanta. What are they? Kevaladvaita, that's Shankaracharya. Then we have, after Shankaracharya, the first one who really objected to this in a very stringent way and successful way was Ramanujacharya. He said, okay, Advaita is there, but Visistadvaita. Within that Advaita, we see that there's variegatedness. And he said that we're also that same Brahman, but we're tiny Brahman, little drops of water out of the ocean, as it were, little sparks out of the fire. Or he gives another analogy of little pieces of gold that are taken from the mine of gold. The point being that we are small and the Supreme Brahman is great, and that Param Brahman is Krishna. Yasyalande Param Brahma. So, he was born in Sri Perumbudur, Tamil Nadu, and he was brilliant from his very childhood. Everybody could see this one is special. He's not ordinary. And he initially studied under Yadava Prakash. Yadava Prakash was one of these Advaitins, but as was the case later on, Madhvacharya also disagreed with his Advaitin teacher, even more strongly than Ramanuja, in fact. But that's for another day to talk about. So he studied under Yadava Prakash, and later he moved to Srirangam. He eventually became the spiritual leader of that Vaishnava community, succeeding his predecessors I mentioned. Lakshmi Devi gave this to so many great devotees who are mentioned in the Bhagavatam, even in the 11th canto. that so many great souls will take birth in the region where the Tamraparni River is flowing, Kaveri River is flowing, that's Srirangam, other sacred rivers in the south. So many devotees will take birth there. So these are the Alwars, Nammalwar and Periyalwar, and so many of them. So Alabanduru, Yamunacharya was representing them later on during Ramanuja's time, and he very much wanted to take initiation from Yamunacharya. Those who are Sanskrit scholars or who are very deeply read in Srila Prabhupada's books also, they know what book is Yamunacharya famous for writing. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada quotes it. Good guess. You got the right sampradaya at least. Stotra Ratna, a very beautiful poem, kind of in the mood of Mukunda Mala or other such works, Padyavali. Although he wrote it himself, but it's just independent, those are called Muktaka shlokas, that all glorify Krishna in different ways. Very beautiful book, and Prabhupada quotes it throughout his, mainly Chaitanya Charitamrita. But, so Yamunacharya. Ramanujacharya had wanted to take initiation from Yamunacharya, but it wasn't fated. It wasn't meant to be. We will talk about that. So, one of the salient moments in young Ramanuja's life was when he publicly disagreed with his own guru about the interpretation of scriptures, favoring a path of bhakti over abstract gyan, because the Mayavadis, as we call them, the Kevaladvaitis, they emphasize the importance of gyan. You have to be transcendental. That's a fact. We also say the same thing. But for them, the gyan is the end also. You don't really have to go further than that. And that is definitely untrue according to Bhagavad Gita. Which verse says that this is untrue? Anybody studied chapter 7? That's your hint. Huh? Very good. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. When one is full in knowledge, Krishna says, he surrenders to me. Ramanujacharya got that. Shankaracharya also understood, but he deliberately tried to obfuscate things. That was the order of Krishna for him. He's not guilty of anything. Shankaracharya also a great devotee, but those who are duped by that philosophy, they're not so great. They don't understand. So, he publicly disagreed with Yadava Prakasha for this reason. He knew Yamunacharya didn't teach that. This is not what he's received from the Alwars. This is not what, certainly the wife of the Supreme Personality of Godhead would not consider him to be impersonal. So, he disagreed with that. And there was some problem there, actually, throughout his lifetime, as is the case with many dynamic reformers. They create enemies. And not that they create enemies, but those who are inimical to the message of Godhead, they become enemies of such a devotee. So Yadava Prakasha was one of those persons, actually. Being an ardent Advaitin and being convinced of that ideology, he actually so much resented Ramanujacharya's attractive, dynamic, prolific preaching of pure Krishna consciousness that at one point he ultimately hatched a plot to kill Ramanujacharya. Yes. Just see. Of course, Ramanujacharya's character was so pure, his devotion was so obvious, and the results of his preaching were so undeniable that even Yadava Prakasha ultimately had to admit that, he's right, we're wrong, and he surrendered. and became his disciple. The same thing happened a little bit later when Ramanujacharya shifted to Srirangam. Actually, he was invited to Srirangam to accept the chair of the Sri Sampradaya. And that's why he wanted to go and take initiation from Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya wanted to initiate him also. But fate was such that he left this world just days before Ramanujacharya arrived in Srirangam. When he arrived in Srirangam, he got the bad news. He's just departed this world. Now they say that when Yamunacharya left this world, his fingers were like this, closed. So Ramanujacharya, he somehow or other, he knew that there was a reason for that. So they said that, what were his unfulfilled desires? There were 3 of them. Number 1, you have to somehow or other propagate this message of the Alawars. You have to preserve the respect given to the Alawars. That's the first thing. When they suggested that, one of those fingers came like this. You have to write a bhashya that encapsulates the Visistadvaita teaching. A bhashya on which one? You mentioned. Sri Bhashya. That's written on Vedanta philosophy, on Brahma Sutras or Vedanta Sutras. Anyone who wants to create his own sampradaya, he has to write a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, expressing why he needs to create a new sampradaya. Otherwise, you have to follow the existing acharya. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Whatever path was trod by our predecessors and our forefathers, that thing we have to do. Unless it's clearly been misunderstood. And it will not be misunderstood by our own acharyas. It's most likely misunderstood by those all around us. So, that was the second thing. You have to write a Sri Bhashya. Only one left. Then he said, you have to preach this message far and wide. That was the third command, or the third desire, unfulfilled desire of Yamunacharya. When they said that, then everything clear. So that's what Ramanujacharya dedicated his life to. And he took initiation into the Ashtakshara mantra. Ashta Akshara. Akshara means syllable. Ashta means 8. Jaise Hindi mein usko 8 bolte hai na. So, Ashtakshara, which mantra is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Think about it. Those who know Sri Sampradaya, they know what mantra they're chanting. Om Na Mo Na Ra Ya Na Ya. That is the Ashtakshara mantra into which Ramanujacharya was initiated by Goshti Purna. And generally when we receive our mantras at Diksha, usually that means Gayatri mantra, but not always. Then it's a secret thing. That's why we cover our hand when we're chanting, that the subtle beings can't see what we're doing, and we don't say it out loud. Nobody should know what mantra you're chanting. So his guru told him this naturally. That is the standard. But Ramanuja climbed up to the top of the temple Gopuram. Every temple in South India has a huge doorway, many stories high, most of them. And he just started shouting out this mantra. Everybody chant this mantra. Om Namo Narayanaya. Say it. Om Namo Narayanaya. And his guru found out about that. He was furious. I just told you have to keep this a secret. What are you doing? So then Ramanujacharya explained to his spiritual master, you gave this for my benefit. This can benefit everyone. Why should I only think of myself? Just see his compassion. Very much Srila Prabhupada has embodied this same spirit in his preaching in the modern age. Very, very much. You can't think just about your own deliverance. You have to think about other people. Look at them. Oh my God, how much they're suffering nowadays. So piteous condition. the world is in 2026. So Ramanujacharya, when he explained his position, his guru was very deeply touched, and he gave him his full blessings. So he said that even if I have to go to hell, as long as so many thousands of others are delivered, then so be it. One of our own acharyas said this also. Which one was it? Visistadvaita Datta. Yeah. Ranti Dev said the same thing, I think, as I recall. So, all right. So driven by his promise to Ramanujacharya, he traveled across India. He engaged in philosophical debates. That's what gave rise to this need for the Sri Bhashya, which he wrote. He definitively established the Visistadvaita philosophy. And eventually he settled in Srirangam. He reorganized the temple worship there. He had done this in other places as well. Later on in life, he went to West Side and he did the same thing there. He tried to go to Jagannath Puri and do it there, but Lord Jagannath didn't want that to happen there. He sent him back. So, in his later years, there was a Chola king who was persecuting. He was a hardcore Shaiva, and he was persecuting the Vaishnavas. And in fact, he was another one of those personalities who tried to conspire to have Ramanujacharya killed. First of all, I think he tried to poison his meal, and then that didn't work, and so he tried to give him Charanamritam that was also poisoned, and that also didn't work. Ramanujacharya, same thing, just by demonstrating his divine character and his pure devotion, even this Chola Raja was just moved and gave up his nefarious plans. But that was later on. Initially, Ramanuja moved to Melkote. Anybody been to Melkote in Karnataka? He established a couple of temples there. Chelunarayana Swami, and also I think the other one is Tirunarayana, if I recall. So Ramanujacharya had this compassionate streak, and on the basis of that, he also made sure that these teachings, which were very carefully kept within the preserve of the Brahminical class, were propagated far and wide. I go every year to South India, Tamil Nadu, and preach there quite a bit. And in fact, I go to Sri Perumbudur as well, the birthplace of Ramanujacharya. Very enthusiastic ISKCON following there. And it's been my observation that among the lower classes even, the Sri Vaishnava remains very prominent. Ramanujacharya established these what they call bhajana matams in Tamil, that place where the local people, neighborhood satsanga, what we call them namahattas now in ISKCON. But he did this 1,000 years ago. Every one of them looks alike. There'll always be a picture of this Balakrishna eating butter, Navanita Chora. And people come there and do their bhajan, and they have kathas, and they do kirtan, and they worship the Lord. And this has been going on for 1,000 years, and still it's going on. So many of them are still thriving. And in fact, ISKCON has taken over managing several of them as well. So this was his compassion to include the lower classes, not just the Brahmins, Yadavas, and others in that area. So that's enduring. And after that, he came back to Srirangam, and eventually he left this world in Srirangam after having preached Krishna consciousness so far and wide and so successfully. He was 120 years old, they say, at the time that he passed away. So this was Ramanujacharya's great contribution to the world of Vaishnavism. Now, what exactly is this Visistadvaita philosophy? We should know these things because we're supposed to be preaching. We know Advaita philosophy is on every third page of Srila Prabhupada's books, so there's going to be something attacking this philosophy because it's so widespread now and because it's so important to understand. So that's one thing we should know. Ramanujacharya was a little bit accommodating. He would not outright deny the veracity of this Advaita idea, because there are so many Advaita Vakyas or statements of oneness even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, what speak of in the Brahma Sutras and other places. Even in the Srimad Bhagavatam we can find them. What's one example? Anybody know? How about this one? Bhayam dvitiyabhiniveshata syat ishara petyasya viparyayo smritihi. 11th canto, Krishna instructs Uddhava. You will be blessed with an eternal companion in the form of fear, Bhaya, if and as long as, to the extent that you see anything second. Dvitiya means second. That sounds like a very strong endorsement of this Advaita ideal, doesn't it? And it is, actually. But we have to understand this properly. So it's not just Kevala Advaita. It's not just only absolute monism. There are varieties which cannot be denied, and there are so many Bheda Vakyas, or statements of variety in the Shastras as well, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, we've heard so many times from Srila Prabhupada, you cannot have devotion unless you have two persons. This is why Madhvacharya holds up two fingers. No, not just one, it's two. Ishvara is one thing, we're another thing. And Madhvacharya is so strong on this point, he won't even admit that we are part and parcels of the Lord. He says we are reflections of the Lord, a different thing altogether. That's very radical. That's why he's called Visistadvaita, pure dualism. Only two things. They're not one in any way. So our philosophy, ISKCON philosophy, a Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, is called Achintya Bheda Bheda. And in fact, most of the Vedanta acharyas, they're preaching some form of what we call Bheda Abheda, simultaneous oneness and difference from the Lord. So Ramanuja kind of hinted at that, but he didn't actually spell it out very clearly. He said, yes, it's a kind of Advaita, but it's a Visistadvaita, a specified Advaita. Vishishta means Vishesha. Something special is there that is not 100% Advaita. Later on, this was spelled out explicitly by Nimbarka Acharya in his called Shuddha Bheda Bhed philosophy. It's simultaneously one and different from the Lord, but he cannot explain how that is so. In fact, no one can explain how that is so, because it's inconceivable. And this is the contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or more appropriately his disciples, especially Jiva Goswami. He actually raised the importance of the Achintya Shakti of the Lord to such a central position in our philosophy that the entire Shat Sandarbhas that he wrote explaining Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, the basis of all the arguments that you read in Srila Prabhupada's purports, they're coming from these Shat Sandarbhas, ultimately. And therefore Prabhupada told Sarup Damodar Maharaj on Venice Beach, I think in 75 or 76, someone else would know better, but without accepting this Achintya Shakti, you cannot have a very mature conception of God. Not possible. You have to understand the importance of the Achintya Shakti and the ramifications of that Achintya Shakti. The Achintya Shakti is the practical manifestation in the philosophical realm of Srimati Radharani. She is the Lord's central Shakti. Hladini Shakti. She gives him pleasure. But all these other things are just her maidservants. all the other aspects of the Lord's Shaktis, they're all working under her. They're all controlled by her. Even Lakshmi Devi, as we mentioned earlier. So, Achintya Shakti is key, and we hear in the Shastras so many times, Achintya khalu ye bhava natans tarkena yojayat. You cannot try to apply your mundane logic and reasoning to things that are beyond it, things that are essentially, ontologically inconceivable. You just have to fold your hands like Lord Brahma does in the third canto and says, maybe somebody else can crush this universe into churna, powder, and count each and every little particle, but I can't do that. Even if you can do that, you'll never come to the end of the Lord's inconceivable glories and potencies and phenomenal powers. You cannot understand everything, but you can understand that He's better than me. That much we can understand. This all the Vaishnavacharyas have in common. So Ramanujacharya was the first one to object to this Advaita philosophy, and he did so very well. Because actually, although our Diksha line is coming from Madhvacharya, Brahma Sampradaya, philosophically we're actually a lot closer to Ramanujacharya's Visistadvaita. And not only Ramanujacharya, but even Sridhar Swami. This is another interesting thing, because most of our acharyas have explained Krishna consciousness in terms of the commentary of Sridhar Swami. Not Vedanta Sutra commentary, because he and so many others accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. But he did write his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jiva Goswami does accept his arguments with regard to how to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. But nominally he was initiated into the Advaita Sampradaya, Shankar Sampradaya. Nominally he was supposed to have been a Mayavadi. But like several other early associates and predecessors of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Kashi around that time, 14th, 15th century, even 16th century, they were initiated in that line, as in fact Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was. But they didn't accept the teaching. They accepted Sridhar Swami's teaching instead. And Sridhar Swami's teaching is unique because really he's implicitly only positing a kind of a Bheda philosophy. And we do say, Achintya Bheda. This is Sridhar Swami's actual philosophy. Diksha line is another thing, Shiksha is the real thing. And that principle comes from Sridhar Swami, because that's what he did in his own life. So, anyway, the point that we're making here is that the Achintya Shakti is the thing that distinguishes us from all other Bheda Sampradayas, and most of those who interpret Vedanta are in fact Bheda philosophies. Only two exceptions. One, Shankaracharya, which we've already discussed. The other one is whom? This is a pop quiz. Anybody know? Who? I'll give you a hint. He teaches Shuddhadvaita, pure non-dualism. Who teaches that? You look like you know. Vallabhacharya, yeah. It's how he does that, that's another matter we don't need to get into. But the fact of the matter is that none of these other Vedanta philosophies, none of these other Sampradaya philosophies actually have the most synthetic and comprehensive and mature realization of how you can have Bheda except for what Jiva Goswami gave. It has to be Achintya. Achintya Bheda. You cannot reconcile these things by logic, not because the logic is bad, but because logic itself is bad. Logic is itself a limitation on direct experience of Brahman. Direct, what we call aparokshanubhuti. Direct, immediate, to use a philosophical term, experience of the supreme absolute truth. Raghupati Upadhyaya, was one associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom he met, in fact, at the house of Vallabhacharya. And as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in, this Raghupati Upadhyaya was a very learned scholar and very cultured gentleman. So immediately he paid his respectful obeisances unto Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, much as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did to Srila Prabhupada at their first meeting, he just immediately told him, no introduction. Tell me something about Krishna. Didn't say, hello, how are you, what's your name? Nothing. Tell me about Krishna. What did Raghupati Upadhyaya say? Shrutamapare smrtamitare bhararamanye bharandu bhavabhitaha ahamihanandam vande yasyalande param brahma. He said, some people, they're very strict followers of the Smriti Shastras. They're called smartas. Who is doing that? Following the smarta rituals? It's the Mimamsakas, those who follow Purva Mimamsa or Karma Mimamsa philosophy. That's one thing. The other thing, he says, Shrutimapare. Other people follow only the Shruti. Who's doing that? Shankaracharya and his followers. They don't accept so much what others. Now here in North India we have this Arya Samaj, right? They have the same idea. They don't accept Puranas. That means they don't accept deities. Kuch nahi. They only accept the Shrutis. That's it. 4 Vedas. So some people are following the Smarta path. Some people are following the Shruti path. Other people are absorbing their minds in the stories and the philosophy of Mahabharata. Why? Bhavabhitaha. They're afraid of material existence. They're all seeking liberation. This is what Raghupati Upadhyaya told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Parantu. But as far as we're concerned, we worship Nanda Maharaj. Kyun? Because in his courtyard, this Supreme Brahman, Param Brahma, is crawling around and playing. You can see the picture right outside. Or he's carrying Nanda's shoes on his head, Krishna himself also. So this is Param Brahma. And this Param Brahma will never reveal himself just through Gyan. Not possible. That's very well established throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout all the other books as well. So Ramanujacharya is the first one who came, he spoke up and said, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't work. Because our acharyas, our Alawars and all these others coming before us, remember, he wasn't first. This is not what they're doing. They're all worshipping Narayana, Perumal. And they want to go back to Paramaparam. That's what they call Vaikuntha, Sri Vaishnavas. So, this is his great contribution. And of course, many stories we can tell, but I would like to share some nice quotes from our own founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, about Ramanujacharya before we have to close because the time is running out. So, that's Ramanuja's life history in a nutshell. And he wrote 9 Sanskrit texts. Tradition attributes to him. One is a very nice book called Vedartha Sangraha, which is a summary of his whole philosophy in a very small work, but very potent. A little bit like in our line we have, well, there's nothing really comparable in our line, but it's a small, very pithy work that sum and substance of his teaching. Vedartha Sangraha means the gist of the meaning of the Vedas. Sri Bhashya, we've mentioned already, that's his Brahma Sutra commentary. And he wrote a Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, also very nice commentary on Bhagavad Gita. We can say things about that, but the time is limited. Vedanta Deepa, Vedanta Sara, Nitya Grantham, Gadya Trayam, describing Vaikuntha, describing Sri Ranganath, and describing the process of surrender. For them, the main deity is Ranganath Swami. That's the seat of their sampradaya. So they're all worshipping him in that way. 9 works he wrote like this. Now, I'm going to skip over to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 6, text 135. Quote, although there is other evidence, the evidence given in the Vedic version must be taken as foremost. Vedic versions understood directly are first-class pramana, or evidence. This is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. But Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, works that should be consulted are Srila Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, text 10 and 11, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary on that, and the following verses of Brahma Sutra. Shastra Yonidvat. What does that mean? Shastra Yonidvat. It means books are the basis. And that's how Prabhupada paraphrases it in his Leela. In other words, everything has to come from Shastra. Here's another one. Tarka Pratishtanat. Because argument alone is not conclusive. That's the whole point of the Tarko Pratishta verse. And another one is Shrutestu Shabda Mulatvat. The real essence of the Shruti is, the real essence of Shabda is the Shruti, the four Vedas. Everything else is Smriti. We have two classes of Vedic literature. Shruti means the four Vedas and the Upanishads. And Smriti means anything else. Puranas, Mahabharata, commentaries, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita, these works. All of them are dependent authorities. Dependent authorities. They're not independent authorities. This is a very, very important point, and that's why Srila Prabhupada explains it in his Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, or was it 22? 20, I think it is, text number 352. He emphasizes this point that the real center is Shastra. Shrutestu Shabda Mulatvat. That comes from Vyasa himself. This is why Vedanta philosophy has always been privileged, because more or less all the acharyas tacitly accept that Vedanta, or Brahma Sutra by Vyasa, is also part of the Shruti. Because it doesn't contain anything other than the Shruti. That's another matter, though. And Prabhupada adds here, as commented by Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkacharya, and Baladev Vidyabhushan. From the same Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text 110. This is from Srila Prabhupada's purport. He says, students of Vedic philosophy know very well how strongly Ramanujacharya's Visistadvaitavad and Madhvacharya's Tattvavad contest the impersonal Mayavad philosophy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, accepted the direct meaning of the Vedanta philosophy and thus defeated the Mayavad philosophy immediately. He opined in this connection that anyone who follows the principles of Sharita Kapashya, that's Shankar's commentary, is doomed. All right, what else can we share here? There's things about Leelas, but I'm going to focus on philosophy because we don't get much of that. Chaitanya Charitamrita Anjalila, chapter 2, text 295, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, a Vaishnava should study the commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra written by the four Sampradaya Acharyas, namely Sri Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka, for these commentaries are based upon the philosophy that the Lord is the master and that all other living entities are his eternal servants. One interested in studying Vedanta philosophy properly must study these commentaries, especially if he is a Vaishnava. That doesn't mean that everybody has to study these things. If one is interested. That's a roundabout way of saying that if he's a Brahmin, this is what Brahmins do. All right. In his own commentary on that couplet, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also again emphasizes that nobody should hear Vedanta philosophy from Shankar Bhashya. That will destroy your Krishna consciousness. Okay. Mayavadi philosophers. This is from, again, Chaitanya Charitamrita 7.128. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand the simple facts explained in Bhagavad Gita, and yet they're very proud of being Vedantis. Sometimes, therefore, we refer to the Vedanti philosophers as Vedantis, those who have no teeth. Why do they have no teeth? He will explain now. Srila Prabhupada ki. There's nobody like Srila Prabhupada. Listen to what he says. The statements of the Shankar philosophy, which are the teeth of the Mayavadi philosopher, are always broken by the strong arguments of Vaishnava philosophers, such as the great Acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya ki. Madhvacharya, Shripad. These philosophers, he says, break the teeth of the Mayavadi philosophers, who can therefore be called Vedantis, toothless. Like Balaram's club, right in the mouth. Full dental work. So Mayavadis, this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 17. Mayavadis generally allege that the bhakti path is for women and illiterates. This is a groundless accusation. The bhakti path is followed by the most learned scholars, such as the Goswamis, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramanujacharya, he mentions. Those who are actual followers of the bhakti path. These are the actual followers of the bhakti path. Regardless of whether or not one is educated or aristocratic, one must follow in their footsteps. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Same verse. One must follow in the path of the Mahajanas. Now, amongst our Goswamis also, several of them actually are from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. Who would that be? Gopal Bhatta Goswami from Sri Rangam. Who else? Prabodhananda Saraswati was a relative of his. Anyone else? Narayana Bhatta Goswami, supposed to have been from Madurai or thereabouts. All Tamilians. Current Ramanujacharya Sampradaya has two branches, so schisms are not new. Varagalai, Tenkalai. Varagalai, the northern school, they say that they emphasize that you have to make your own endeavor, like the monkey. Because you're not going to get much mercy if you don't do that. That is a fact. And they emphasize Sanskrit more. They have the U-shaped tilak with a yellow line up the center, representing Lakshmi. This is Varagalai. And our Goswamis, Gopal Bhatta and others, they come through that line from Srirangam. The other is a Tengalai in the south. They say it's the monkey philosophy, the kitten philosophy. The cat carries the kitten, and the kitten doesn't have to do anything. And they also emphasize the Tamil Veda. They have the square tilak, more like. So small differences. All right, so yeah, we could say so much more, but our time is up now. Maybe I should just stop here and ask if anyone has any questions or any comments. Yes, Vishwambar Prabhu.
Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he establishes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that, he establishes his opinion that if anyone who doesn't accept Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they are demons. On the other hand, Srila Prabhupada, he has a different narrative on this, that any other sampradaya, any of those four sampradayas, they are good enough to take you back home, back to Godhead. Now my question is, the other three sampradayas, they do not accept.
What?
The other three sampradayas, they don't accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. Yes. So what is the, this is Achintya Shakti for me. I cannot
Achintya Shakti.
understand.
Okay. I asked the same question about over 40 years ago to Gopi Paranadana Prabhu. And he just answered me nonchalantly. He said, well, there's no reason they can't accept Lord Chaitanya. Maybe nobody's preached to them yet. What are you doing? That's one approach. Another conversation between Tamal Krishna Goswami, Achyutananda Swami, Srila Prabhupada, and maybe somebody else also, I heard. I don't know the date offhand, but Achyutananda brought up this question because we're preaching, he said, to these Pushti Margiyas and other people who don't necessarily accept our position about Lord Chaitanya. So, and Krishna, given the same quote that you mentioned from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, says that these people are demons. So, he asked Prabhupada to clarify, and Prabhupada said that means that they cannot come to the higher rasas. They may get their dasya rasa, especially in South India, that is the prominent rasa. Pushti Marg, they emphasize Vatsalya rasa, but Prabhupada said, without the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is your entrance into these things? Sakhya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa. These are the main thing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching, especially Madhurya. And they may get some idea, they have appreciation, they may even be trying to cultivate something, but it will not mature fully. It will remain imperfect without the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and certainly without the blessings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's come in this Kali Yuga for that purpose only. So we don't have to necessarily publicize what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says about them. And that doesn't mean that we should not also study their philosophies for the sake of comparison if we are of that philosophical bent and require to do so. But it does mean that we should not place equal faith in them that we place in Srila Prabhupada and our predecessors of this sampradaya. That's how I reconcile it, and I don't think that that's particularly inconceivable. Is that satisfying?
Still it's confusing, but it's okay.
It is confusing because Gyan itself is confusing. As I said earlier.
They're not demons.
Huh?
How can they be demons if Prabhupada said
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are?
Well, this is some people give the opinion that this is a statement of his subjective, is an emotional statement more than a philosophical one. I mean, why is it that none of our acharyas throughout their entire Srimad Bhagavatam, in all the commentaries, at least I haven't seen any of our acharyas say anything nice about Akrura? He was a pure devotee also. Somebody mentioned this in class the other day. I don't know if it was here or elsewhere, but he gets a bad rap because he just, he had to do that service, and that's how it is. If that's your fate, then you can't do anything about it. But still, the emotions of these great souls, I mean, they're intimate associates of the Lord. It really hurts them. And so they just can't come to terms with it, it would seem. But the philosophy is another thing. Philosophy should be objective. Philosophy should be Shastra-based. It should be something that is, public as well. That's a different matter. Internal emotions is another matter. So that's one way to see it. There may be others. I don't know if somebody else wants to add. I think that's probably about the best that we can do with it. Again, you have to consider that the limitation is not the argument. The limitation is the process of argument itself. Gyan, logic, this is the limitation. The argument is perfect if you accept it, but this requires that you fully embrace the Achintya Shakti, as we mentioned. So that's why Prabhupada said that to Sarup Damodar. You want to add anything, August Seniors?
I'll wrap it up.
Okay, yeah.
But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that my spiritual master, that I'm not qualified to understand Vedanta philosophy, and everyone born a Shudra, so better we just chant the holy name. And it's good to hear the philosophical arguments, but it's kind of mind puzzling, all these Advaita, Visistadvaita, Advaita, Beta, Beta, Tattva. It's very philosophical for scholars, those who can retain it and understand it. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took the position of Harinama, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalu, Anasteva, Anasteva, Dasteva, Gatiranyata.
Actually, Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Goswami in 1976 in Manhattan, New York, they were touring the temple there, and they saw this Govinda's restaurant, which was terribly successful. I shouldn't say terribly, it was wildly successful. And he told them, from now on, don't even bother opening any more temples. Just open restaurants and reading rooms. This he wanted. So, yeah. Prasadam, Kirtan, book distribution. These three things we should focus on. Ordinarily. But if you happen to meet some king somewhere, or you have to meet with some acharya somewhere, you'd better know your stuff.
We're going to call you.
We did it already. Anyway, so, I'm going to end here with a very nice, simple quote from Madhya Lila, chapter 25, text 56. The ultimate goal of studying all Vedic literature is the acceptance of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Krishna consciousness movement is propagating the philosophical conclusion of Srila Vyasadeva and following other great acharyas like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami Nimbarka, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. That's good enough for most people. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ramanujacharya ki jai, Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Go Premanandi.
Mukunda Datta Prabhu ki.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.